I'm Roy White, and we're coming on.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Chris Vitali. Welcome to the newest installment of Tuesdays with Leroy. And if you are a Yankee fan of a certain age, my guest today needs absolutely no introduction. But for the sake of the show, I'm going to introduce him anyway. Played for the Yankees from 1965 to 79, switch hitting outfielder. A lot of people will say one of the greatest Yankees of all time, yet who am I to disagree? Ladies and gentlemen, Roy White joins us today. It's a pleasure to have you, Mr. White. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I don't want to go that far. One of the greatest of all time. I don't know about that.
I was reading something today.
Nice to hear.
If you look at the all-time Yankees leaders, in almost every major stat category, you're there. In the top 10, top 25, I think you're in about 9 or 10 of them. You were a fan favorite. I mean, whether they were DHing you or... how did you do that every day? Like switching roles, part-time, DH, full-time. I mean, how did you deal with that?
Well, I played regular most of the time, really.
Yeah.
66 and 67, I was kind of finding my way, into the major leagues and went through a couple of position changes, because I came up as a second baseman. And the Yankees had Bobby Richardson, all-star second baseman, already there. And they had Horace Clark, AAA second baseman, having great years behind him. So I was kind of in search of a position, for those 2 years. Had a little trial at third base at one time. It didn't go well. And finally settled into the outfield in 1968. This is when Ralph Houk came to me in spring training and said, don't worry about second base. Don't worry about third base. You're just going to be in the outfield, and that's where we need you. And once I was able to focus on that, that kind of turned my career around. So most of the time I was out there in left field. I guess the most games in Yankee history.
Yeah.
And occasionally I DH later on in my career when the DH came out, maybe a few times I DH. Yeah. In 77 or 78, but I really didn't do that role that much. And I think I played first base actually 10 games in 1974 when Bill Verdon became manager. And got to switch back to the outfield though. So
yeah. Well, I mean, 68 was kind of your breakout campaign.
Right, definitely.
And now with the managerial changes, I had read that, you had thought you were Billy Martin's type of guy.
Yeah.
And I mean, were you kind of clashing? I mean, was there something there? I mean, how was playing for Billy Martin? I mean, I've spoken to a few guys that have played for him, and it's kind of a mixed bag.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy playing for Billy because you never knew what he was going to do. He wasn't predictable.
To say the least.
I was happy, and as I knew that Billy liked to play hit and run and steal, as they say, Billy ball. And that was right up my alley. That was something that I didn't get to do a lot in my career. I actually had to hit cleanup for the Yankees for 6 years. That's how bad our team was. They had to use me with just enough power to hit maybe 15 or 20 at my best. Yeah. So I always wanted to be a number one or a number two guy. I thought that's where I was best suited in. So when Billy came, I had that opportunity, especially in 1976 when we got Mickey Rivers.
Sure.
And then I got to hit number two behind Mickey. So, we could hit and run. We could steal, we could move runners. I could bunt. I could do all the things to get on base to help the team win, and actually scored 102, 103 runs that season.
In 76?
And Mickey Rivers, I think, scored 98. So, I mean, the top two guys in a lineup with almost 100 runs scored. I think you could look over the last 30 or 40 years, you can't find that. There hasn't been a number 1 and 2 that have been 100 runs scored for the Yankees, over the last 25, 30 years. So,
yeah, I mean, honestly, they could use that right about now.
Right. So I thought I was a Billy sort of guy, but then, in 77, all of a sudden he changed. And by midseason, I wasn't hitting number 2 anymore. I think he started switching me around late 77 and 78. So I was disappointed, in that respect, hitting number 6. I wasn't really number 6 hitter, but I ended up hitting number 6 or 7 sometimes. So and I was definitely a top of the lineup, type of hitter. So.
Oh, by the way, 1976, you led the league with 104 runs scored. So you undersold it a little bit. So, yeah. But seriously, I mean that one too. I mean, just speed and you were the ultimate number 2 hitter at that point because especially with Mickey in front of you, as you said. I mean, you put the ball anywhere in the field. You're moving him around. He's stealing bases. You're wreaking havoc, and then you get your middle of the order guys, and. And then that's really obviously when things started turning around for the Yankees.
That was some of the most fun I had playing in baseball. It was that 1976 season.
I believe it.
Yeah, the only downer was losing to the Reds in the World Series.
In
4 straight.
That could be a problem. But then, hey, look, 77 and 78 happened. And,
But the funny thing about 1976 is, playing the Reds in the World Series, as I mentioned in my book, that's out now, Leroy White from Compton to the Bronx. When I was a kid, Cincinnati Reds were my favorite team.
I read that.
So here's my first World Series after 11 years, and we're playing the Cincinnati Reds, the Big Red Machine.
Oh.
Yeah. I liked them as a kid because they had sleeveless uniforms.
The vests.
And they could always hit. I thought that was cool that they had these sleeveless uniforms. And they had teams that had a lot of hitting power back in the days. Ted Klaczewski, Wally Post, Gus Bell, then later on Frank Robinson coming up, Vada Pinson and those guys. So
Vada Pinson under the radar. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then later on, of course, 77 and 78, we get to play the Dodgers. I'm from Los Angeles, so that was great.
You are.
Going against the Dodgers. And one of the players on the opposite side was Reggie Smith.
High school. You went to high school with
him. We went to high school and played Little League ball together and everything. So,
I didn't know you played Little League too.
Oh, yeah. All the way back to Little League. Reggie Smith was the home run king in Little League.
That doesn't surprise me. A funny thing about Reggie Smith is I was speaking with Dave Parker, and I think it was like 79 that the All-Star game was held at Yankee Stadium, and they had a little throwing competition into a garbage can at home plate or something like that. And I asked him, fully expecting Dave Parker to say he had the best arm.
Right.
He said Reggie Smith. So, apparently Reggie Smith, so he had it going.
No, he had one of the great.
Dave Parker did say he was the best looking player, of course. But, and so I wanted to bring that up now, when you played in LA on the road, what did that feel like playing, in front of your family, in front of your friends? And with an old friend like Reggie Smith. What was that like going back, playing in the World Series, winning the World Series in LA?
No, well, it was great to have that opportunity. We made trips out to Anaheim to play the Angels, during those years. So my mother and my brother and family, had a chance to come out and see me play on those occasions when we played the California Angels back then. And then in the World Series, of course, they had a chance to see me play. And mostly 78. 77 was kind of bittersweet. We got in that World Series and we're going to play the Dodgers. And that's where Billy really kind of stuck it to me. Yeah. He promised me I was going to play against right-handed pitching in that 77 World Series, and it never happened. I think I ended up pinch hitting twice. I didn't start one game. So I was kind of bitter about that. And I regret that I was. I should have just kind of sucked it up, in retrospect now, because I didn't go to the parade or anything, after the season was over. They had the parade in New York. I didn't even go. And in 78, I ended up playing every game.
Oh, yeah.
In the World Series. It was almost MVP. It came down to game number 6. And Bucky got 3 hits. I only got 1. So Bucky got the MVP, deservedly so. And just to show I wasn't a hypocrite, I didn't go to the parade that year either. Yeah, so I said in retrospect, I say to myself, Roy, you were an idiot. That's a once in a lifetime thing to be in a parade in New York City, after winning the World Series, and I passed it up. So,
oh man,
but that's the way life goes, and I admit it now. Yeah, I was wrong with that.
Well, I mean, but speaking of 1978, your bat, and speaking of Bucky Dent, people think that it was Mickey Rivers' bat that Bucky hit that home run with over the monster. And can you clear that up for the record?
Right. What happened was in that playoff game in Boston during batting practice, we were hitting, and Bucky had been in a slump. He had been struggling. And so he's hitting in the cage, and he's not hitting the ball that well. And so when he came out, I looked at his bat, and it was the same model of one that I had ordered, mid-season. It's like an R161 model. And I didn't like the bat. After I got it, I didn't like the way it felt. But I knew Mickey Rivers liked that kind of model, and I had gave the order to Mickey Rivers. And that bat was 34 and a half inches long, 32 ounces. Bucky Dent had a bat, when I picked up his bat, it was 35 inches long and maybe 34 ounces, and he choked up on it. Yeah. So I said, Bucky, why don't you try the bat that I gave to Mickey? It's a little shorter and a little lighter, maybe it might help your swing. So he used it in batting practice, and he says, yeah, hey, this feels pretty good. I feel better. So when he came up to hit, I guess that was in the bottom of the 7th inning, and he had fouled the ball off his ankle, and he went back to the on deck circle, and Gene Montana, the trainer, was spraying his ankle and everything, trying to get the pain out. And Mickey Rivers was in the on deck circle, and he looked over at his bat and picked it up, and he says, Bucky, why are you using this bat? Because the one that he had used, which was my bat, had a chip in the knob. And he says, well, I didn't want to use your game bat, because we have bats we use in the game and bats that we use in batting practice. So Mickey says, no, use this one. We're on the same team. So he gave him the other bat. And that's the bat that he goes up and he hits the home run with. So that bat was my bat, that I gave to Mickey.
Yes.
Now, they used that story for so long, like in their off seasons, about it being Mickey Rivers' bat, that I was starting to believe maybe it was Mickey Rivers' bat. Maybe he had one and he gave him. So I'm in Cooperstown during the Hall of Fame week, and I was doing a signing there, and people are coming by, and I'm signing autographs. And one guy was on his way to the Hall of Fame. I said, hey, when you go to the Hall of Fame, go down to where they have the display of the bats. That the bat that Bucky used to hit the home run at Fenway is supposed to be in the Hall of Fame. And the guy said, okay, yeah, I'll check it out, and I'll come back and I'll let you know. So a couple hours later, he comes back and he says, the bat's not there. It's on the road. Like in the Hall of Fame, sometimes they take stuff out of the Hall of Fame and they give exhibitions in other cities. He says, but the curator up there says, when he comes back, I'll send you an email and I'll let you know. And so he told me that. And I said, okay, I'll give you my email when you find that out. Send me an email, let me know. A couple of months later, I got an email and it says, your name was on the bat. So I knew it was my bat.
There it is. There it is. That's the definitive answer.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
No doubt. So
that's fantastic.
That's the true story.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I actually also wanted to ask about something not so lighthearted, about the game after Thurman Munson passed. I'm just surprised any of you guys were able to get out there and play, because I know what Thurman meant to you guys.
Right.
What was that like, going out there and playing that day?
No, it was one of the toughest days of my life.
Yeah, I believe.
Thurman and I sat next to each other in the Yankee locker room, for those 10 years that he's with the ball club. So Thurman's like the first guy that I saw every day when I came to Yankee Stadium. So we became pretty close friends. And on a lot of the plane rides, he would sit with me. And so I knew a lot about him. He talked about his family, what he wanted to do when he got out of baseball. And he was studying the manual on flying, how to be a pilot, on a lot of the flights. He had the manual out there. And he says, Roy, when I get this plane, after we play a doubleheader on Sundays, because back in those days, on Sundays was always a doubleheader in Yankee Stadium.
I remember.
And Monday would be a day off. He said, I'll be able to hop on my plane, fly back to Canton. In an hour and a half, I'll be home. I have the whole day off at home. Then I could just fly back to New York. So, that was his goal in getting the plane. So I was deeply hurt, and it was a lot of pain, for a guy that I was that close to all the time to pass away like that tragically. And I didn't play in that game. That was, I was going through the same thing. Billy, only played me maybe barely half of that season. I only got like 270 at bats. In 1979. That was my last year with the Yankees. But it was a tough experience for everybody to go out there and play that game. And Bobby Mercer had the great night, hitting a couple of home runs to win that ball game. So,
I mean, I was a young guy when that happened. So, whenever I get a chance to ask about it, it's really interesting.
Right. Yeah, Thurman was a great guy, tough guy on the outside, but a soft-hearted guy. When you got to know him, and I knew him pretty well. And his favorite thing with me was he says, Roy, whenever I want to have a good dinner on the road, I look for you. Because all the best restaurants in the American League.
That's important. That's very important. That's important.
So I was kind of the gourmet of the club, for fine dining.
So they knew So they knew to follow you somewhere on the road too. Okay.
Right.
That's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
So 1980, you went over to Japan. You got to play with Sadaharu for 3 years. You provided protection to him in the lineup for a good 3 years. And you kind of became beloved over there as well as a player. And, and you won a Japan series as well. So you had just come off 2 World Series that you go over there, you win a Japan series. What was that experience like, just going over there, playing with a guy like
Yeah, it was a great experience. I was curious about baseball in Japan. I had read about guys going over there. And when I got the opportunity to go, I was in winter ball, actually, because I didn't play that much, I said, in 1979.
Yeah.
And I got a call, after the season was over. I got a call from Lenny Randall, who was in Puerto Rico playing for Frank Robinson. And Lenny Randall, I also know him from high school and Little League because we were both.
Really? Okay.
So he says, Roy, we need an outfielder down there. You want to come down and play for Frank, Frank Robinson, Santurce, Puerto Rico. So I say, hey, that's a pretty good idea. I can come down there and see if I still have it, see if I can get my swing back since I didn't get a chance to play as much. So I went down there and I was playing and playing great, got my swing back, felt great. And Jerry Capstein was my agent. All of a sudden I get a call from him and he says, hey, Roy, I got an offer from the Tokyo Giants to play in Japan. And it's for $500,000 for a 2-year contract. So this was going to be my biggest contract in my life. My best season with the Yankees was $160,000. So now I was going to make $250 a year for those 2 years to play with the Tokyo Giants. So I jumped on that opportunity to go over to Japan. And I was very nervous, actually, going over there to play because I didn't want to disappoint the people, because I'm from the Yankees and I had a great reputation and it played well in the States. So, I really want to be able to do well over there. So it was that pressure. And the funny thing is, all during that spring training that I had with the Tokyo Giants, the press every day they would ask me, how many home runs are you going to hit? They wanted you to predict, how many homers. They were obsessed with the home run. And I kept telling them, I said, hey, I'm not a home run guy. I'm just a winning player. I like to try to do things to win. Home runs are only an accident for me. I don't think about them. Opening day, I hit 2 home runs, went 4 for 5.
They fell in love with you.
Drove in 6 runs. And after the game, the press says, we thought you said you can't hit home runs, but I had 2. So, and then I ended up hitting cleanup behind Sadahara O. I ended up hitting number 4. So I hit number 4 behind Mickey Mantle in 1968. And here I am hitting number 4 behind Sadahara O in Japan. And that first year we didn't win the Japan series, but the second season we went all the way to the Japan series. I think I had a home run in game 2 that turned the series around when we were down 1-0. And we were losing, getting shut out by a pitcher that was one of the best pitchers in the league that year. And I hit a 2-run homer off of him in the bottom of the 7th, and that won the game. And we swept them after that.
Nice.
I think I got MVP for that. So it was great. It was a great experience.
Absolutely.
For my family and everybody that had a chance to go over there, my kids.
Sure. And you stayed involved with, with scouting with the Yankees afterwards. I read that you were pretty instrumental in the Yankees signing Hideki Matsui. And that you would go back over there, do clinics in Japan, and
I did some baseball clinics. There was a gentleman over there named Hiroka, who was a manager at one time, but then he was a big wheel in the Japanese leagues, and he had an organization which did this big baseball clinic, and they called it the World Children's Baseball Fair.
Oh, wow.
And they had kids from all over Europe and the United States come to Japan to learn baseball from major leaguers and
very cool.
And professional players from Japan. So that, and then when I came back to the Yankees, I came back as a coach, and later on went up to the front office and did some scouting. And this one particular season, myself and another scout, we went to Japan and scouted Japanese baseball. And Hideki Matsui was playing center field for the Tokyo Giants. And I saw Ichiro at that time also.
Oh, wow.
And, I liked both of those guys, and I gave them good reports. So I never thought anything about it. Eventually Matsui signs with the Yankees. And I'm not with the Yankees anymore. I'm coaching Sacramento River Cats in the Oakland A's organization. So we're playing in mid-season in Sacramento, and a Yankee scout is down there scouting the Pacific Coast League. And he saw me. He says, hey, Roy. He calls me over to the side. I see him. I'd seen him before. And we start talking about baseball. And then he tells me, he says, do you know how we signed Hideki Matsui? And I said, no. I mean, how did you sign him? He says, well, we had a big meeting, and we weren't sure. It was kind of 50-50 whether to offer him a contract. And while we were having this meeting, one of the guys says, hey, Roy went over there and scouted Matsui, several years ago. Let's look at his report. So they looked at my report, and I had gave him, like some A+ in some categories where I thought that he could translate into Major League Baseball. That's how they signed Hideki Matsui.
Yeah.
Nobody knows that story until I tell you now, and in my book.
Yeah, they do. And we're going to get to the book right now. And it's From Compton to the Bronx. Came out on April 11th.
Right.
If you want to talk a little bit about that, I mean, I'm looking forward to getting one and reading it. So I want to let people know a little bit about. I can't wait. So,
no, a lot of people don't know that I came from Compton. That's where I grew up.
Yeah.
I thought that made a good title.
It's a good. It is. It's great.
Bronx. And the ironic thing about it is that I wasn't a fan of the Yankees as a kid. Growing up in Compton. Right. In our neighborhood, we had a bunch of us that loved baseball, and we played baseball all the time. And we kind of rooted against the Yankees, because the Yankees were the They were in the World Series every year. They were kind of like the General Motors, was a description of baseball. We respected them, but we didn't really root for the
Of
Yankees.
course.
We rooted for the St. Louis Cardinals, the Milwaukee Braves, the Dodgers, and stuff like that.
Anybody playing the Yankees?
The last team I expected when I was coming out of high school to be interested in me was the New York Yankees. And it turned out that was the first scout that came to my door with a contract in his hand was a scout from the Yankees. And I changed my attitude then because I started thinking, wow, the Yankees, I'll be in the World Series every year if I sign with the Yankees. And the money wasn't what I expected because my best friend in high school who played shortstop, who was a year ahead of me, had signed with the Tigers and got $50,000.
Oh.
And another player that I knew that played for Compton, who was our crosstown rival, had signed with the Pirates and got 20. So I certainly felt that I was in that category. I said, I should get 15 or 20 grand probably to sign, And so he says, we have a contract for you, and it's going to be for $4,000. $2,000 when you sign and $2,000 when you get to the big leagues. So anyway, I wasn't impressed with that, but I didn't have any other offers at that time. Nobody else it came, and since I just lived with my mom, I didn't have a dad there to confide in or to ask for their advice. I went to my coaches that I had in high school and my Connie Mack League coach, American Legion, and I chatted with them about it, and they kind of said, "Hey, you always wanted to be a big league ball player. Here's your opportunity. And you should go ahead and give it the shot." So, that's how I ended up signing, a New York Yankee contract.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
But as I said, that World Series took me 11 years before I finally saw the World Series.
A far cry from every year. I mean, but you were one of the guys, that in those lean years, I mean, people came to watch you. They knew you were going to do your thing, and you
right.
You just played. You were a baseball player, and you were going to do what you did. And luckily you got a couple of rings to your name.
Right, no doubt,
deservedly so. I mean, really, honestly, it's if anybody deserved them, I think it was you. So I know.
Yeah, so I went through. I had to go through the minor leagues, and back then in the minor leagues.
Yeah, I know that was.
You expected to be in the minor leagues at least 5 or 6 years to get to the big leagues in those days, because we had there were 6 classifications of minor league baseball to go through before you got to the top. You had to go through D, C, B, A, Double A, Triple A, and then the big leagues. And those leagues no longer exist. It's only A, Double A, Triple A now. So guys can come out of college and be in the big leagues in a couple of years, or high school, maybe 3 years. You can get up there much quicker. And back then, of course, there was segregation and racism in the South. And I had to play in Greensboro, North Carolina, and in Columbus, Georgia. I went through Birmingham, and a lot of those places I couldn't stay in the same hotel with my teammates, and couldn't eat in any of the restaurants. When we were traveling on the road, they had to bring me food on the bus and stuff like that. So, so that was kind of tough, going through the minor leagues at that time, to get up to the Yankees. And I talk about that in my book. And, growing up in California, I was from a mixed marriage. My dad was white. My mother was black. And, when you're 5 or 6 years old, that was normal to me.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was unusual,
Yeah.
But, later on, I find out that, that was unusual, And in a couple of instances while I was going through that in the South, I actually passed as white just to go to a movie. Really? Because I was more light-skinned then, and my hair was straight and wavy, and they thought maybe I was Spanish. And I loved to go to the movies, so I would sneak in, and they would let me in.
Oh, man.
So, so I touch on that in the book and the Japan stuff, as we talked about before. So I think I have a lot of interesting stuff in there that people enjoy reading about. I think it'll help inspire young kids that are interested in baseball or guys that are playing in high school and thinking about, they'd like to play in the major leagues.
If that's just the tip of the iceberg, I can't wait to read the book because some of these stories are going to be really incredible. And like you said, it should be inspiring.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of good feedback. Everybody that's been reading it has gotten back to me and said that they love it. So
yeah, well, I'm looking forward to it for sure. It's definitely it's next on the list, and I can't wait to read it. And
all right.
I want to say thank you. I know you're I know you have to run. So
all right.
I want to say thank you to Roy White. I'm Chris Vitali. I want to say also thank you to Reed, Mr. White's son, for putting this together. Also on the board of the foundation. So from Compton to the Bronx, the new book, it's out now. Please check out the Roy White Foundation as well. I will put the links and everything on the bottom of the screen here. And Mr. White, thanks again. I really appreciate it.
All right, thanks for having me on, Chris.
Take care.
I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
All right.